This is the first time I've worn makeup in a week. So I let myself have some fun. Let's just say that my 2 online summer courses are way more demanding than I thought they would be. You would think taking 8 credits, since they both have labs, for 2 months would be equally as stressful as taking 16 credits for 4 months. However, I can't wait until August, except I only have 2 weeks until I start my fall classes. So, hopefully after this first week, I will feel more adjusted and can start wearing makeup again, because my gosh, makeup was not on my radar at all. Now let's get to the actual content, and I wanted to share some tips for how to want less makeup. Now I've shared a few kind of tips in my No Buy finale video. Don't watch that. It's kind of boring, not gonna lie. I rewatched it to see if there are any overlapping tips, and there weren't really. And I was just kind of like, why is it so long? I'm just so bored. Anyway, so hopefully this won't be boring. I will try not to just ramble on like I am now. I'm already failing. Great job, Anna. But with that said, let's start with tip number 1, which is to create specific guidelines for purchasing. The more specific you get, the easier it is to want less, because your options of brands are limited. For instance, one of my first guidelines that I created was that I wanted to buy brands that were cruelty-free or didn't test on animals. And with that, there is a lot of debate on whether parent companies that aren't cruelty-free should be counted when you're considering the brands underneath that are technically cruelty-free, and there's the whole China business, and I know there's complications, but it's kind of a personal decision you can make. However, choosing brands that are, for the most part, not testing on animals does help eliminate a lot of brand options. And the thing about choosing cruelty-free is a lot of people think that that makes the brand ethical. And there are a lot of things brands can do that are wrong. So another guideline that I created for myself was to avoid brands that were owned by sketchy brand owners and representatives. For instance, Jared Blandino from Too Faced and the whole Rich Lives Matter post. Anyways, Too Faced was already sketchy before that, and the whole Nikki Tutorials business, I don't feel like getting into it. The transphobia, there's just so much that was not okay. I don't know what that was. Anyways, but things like that, or for instance, P. Louise, who for some reason made a canceled collection because she was canceled for saying the N-word. Woe is me. What? First off, you weren't canceled. People were still buying from the brand, and you literally got more people to hear about the controversy by bringing it up. Anyways, that was just some examples of brands that I choose to avoid because of people that are representing them or owning the brand, gaining profit from you buying from that brand. Another example of strict guidelines would be to avoid brands that have really poor shade ranges. Palme! Clinique! Not only that, but you could also choose to only buy from specific lines of products that have good shade ranges. For instance, maybe the brand has a good foundation shade range, but they have a horrible blush range that only works on people really fair or something like that. Maybe you can choose to not buy any blushes from that range because they don't cater to a wide range of skin tones. Things like that make it a lot easier to not want makeup because you don't want to support brands or lines that don't cater to people that don't just look like a certain way. That was a weird way to say it, but I think you get what I mean. Another example, which doesn't apply to everyone, but if you have a strict budget, that really helps. Or making yourself have a strict budget just because you want to save money for like a fun trip, or if you want to save up for something that is bigger or that'll last longer and isn't necessarily makeup, then maybe you can say I won't buy from any luxury brands, or go further and be like, I'm not gonna buy any high-end makeup and I'm gonna stick to drugstore prices. Some people do that out of necessity, or if they're a broke college student. And some people might just do that because they don't want to spend a ton of money. So those are all different specific guidelines that if you do all of them like I do, or I try to, it eliminates a lot of makeup that you might want. It's interesting because I've trained my brain so that even if I see something, be like, oh, that's really pretty, I kind of like that. So I'm like, oh, it's MAC, never mind, I don't care. Also, that reminds me, brands that support people or corporations or movements that you don't support, that can also eliminate brands. It's interesting how, since I've been doing this for so long, my mind is just trained to immediately ignore any makeup from brands that I don't support, even if it's something that would interest me if it was from a different brand or was it of a different price. Yeah, it's just you gotta train your brain in a sense. Now my next tip is something that a lot of people say, which is unsubscribe from beauty news sources on all different platforms so that you don't see a bunch of new makeup coming in your feed and constantly on your radar. But I did add something to this, which is if you don't want to do that. For instance, I still follow Kat and Haley through Beauty News both on YouTube and on Instagram. My advice for people who still want to keep up with new beauty news, especially if you follow a lot of YouTubers who don't necessarily buy a lot but always are reacting to the new makeup releases, treat every single release as a chance for a roasting session. It is so fun and hilarious. I will add a bit of an exception if it is a brand that is, for instance, an indie company, smaller owned, you really respect them, maybe don't go in their comments and make fun of them. But for brands that are like multi-million corporations, you know, like really, really big ones owned by Estee Lauder and stuff like that, you don't owe them niceness. You don't owe them compliments. Like you can be honest with yourself. I really enjoy specifically following beauty news because everyone in the comments is very critical of the releases and it's just really funny. So I encourage you to embrace and enjoy hypercriticism because the more critical you are of makeup, the less you'll want that specific makeup. And this leads to something that I mentioned in the past about not settling for makeup that is almost perfect, something that you think is, oh, that's so close to what I've been looking for. If there's something wrong with it, you can point it out to yourself, say, hey, the packaging is impractical, or hey, that color is a little bit off, or hey, I wish it wasn't a satin finish and it was a matte finish, or whatever it is. And if you're bold enough, you can go in the comments of Beauty News Sources and criticize the brands, especially if you're not specifically on the brand's platform. I don't think they're going to notice, and you might actually help other people not buy it as well. But also, like, if ABH posts their newest release and you think it's stupid because it's makeup wipes, by all means, make fun of them in the comments. It's so funny. And in that similar vein, tip 3 is to join like-minded people in communities such as different YouTube channels or subreddits such as Makeup Rehab that really focuses on recovering from makeup addictions or just wanting to not overconsume, overspend, and learning to be happy with what you have. And that leads me to my 4th tip, which is play with what you have. A lot of the reason you might get bored is because you see your makeup in the same way as always, and you're lacking inspiration or creativity. And sometimes what it takes to kind of bring back those creative juices is to just do something crazy and random. And if that is the case, doing some makeup roulettes by randomizing what you're gonna use every day until you feel inspired because you're just doing something random. You have to think outside the box, or just do usage-oriented projects until you feel familiar with everything you have, because sometimes we avoid things that are unfamiliar and then we end up having so many items that we don't really know or don't really use. And also just focus on stop your stashes and doing rotations, keeping things fresh. I know people with larger collections like to basically have a new makeup collection each month, but it's small, so they rotate it that way. For people with similar size collection to mine, doing shop your stashes might not be as beneficial, but still trying something new and going out of your comfort zone can really be helpful in terms of not wanting makeup. And in that same vein of getting to know what you have before you buy something. Let's say you are really drawn to this from a brand that you really like, you want to support, and it's something that you think you would use a lot, and you put it on your wish list, it's been there for weeks or whatever. Search for dupes in your collection. Especially if you have a larger collection, you might forget about something or not realize how similar something is. Always thoroughly search for dupes before considering actually buying something. There's just a lot, especially eyeshadow palettes, that look so similar. And also, think about blushes. How many of them look really similar on the cheeks, even if they are slightly different colors? And if it's a slightly different finish, can you, add a blush topper on top of a blush and get the same kind of effect as the one you're wanting? It might just be 2 steps instead of 1. Like, think about all the different possibilities for how you could get to a certain product without actually buying it. So those are my 5 main tips. I think my favorite one is definitely just seeing every new release as a potential for a roasting session, because I just love people roasting in comments when it comes to especially really dumb releases or really poorly thought out. But I hope that this was a helpful video, and if not, maybe at least enjoyable. Hopefully it demotivated you from buying makeup. Obviously, makeup is supposed to be fun, and you don't want to put a bunch of burdens in terms of like feeling guilty for buying something, but it also can be freeing. Just not caring about certain brands and their feelings, not caring about certain lines because you care more about your morals or your budget and your bank account. Just learning to let go of the constant need for more and learning to just be content with what you have, which is what my whole no buy low buy journey is trying to get me to a place. And I think each day I'm getting closer and closer to it, and weeks like this last week make me realize when I'm busy enough or stressed enough or both, then I really don't care about makeup. Like, it's not on my radar. I'm just like, I have to write this essay. Who has time for eyeshadow? And then I'm like, why would I buy more eyeshadow when I don't even use the ones I have because I'm too busy? Things like that. Obviously, I'm not encouraging you guys to like overwork and get stressed out, but even in the past week where I was up at a cabin, I didn't bring much makeup, and I didn't really miss it because I was having fun, relaxing, and not thinking about whether my eyeshadow smeared or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure there's an eyelash poking my eye currently, so if my eye was acting weird, that is why. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Bye!